Hello everyone, this is Vishwas and welcome back to our YouTube channel Front End Devs. I'm working in software industry from past 11 years and with my experience I'm creating the high quality content on YouTube for front end developers. Whether you are starting your web development journey or want to level up your skill, then you have got covered in this channel. When we talk about this playlist, we are working on creating the playlist for fundamental core concept, starting from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we will be also covering CSS advanced feature like CSS Flex, CSS Grid, and complete responsive web development. If you're new to my channel, we already created the first video on HTML5. This is 2.5 hours complete HTML5 course, and we have covered in-depth understanding around the web development, front-end technologies, back-end technologies, APIs, and then we have covered HTML5 from basics to advanced level, considering HTML list, HTML tables, HTML forms, multimedia elements, and much more things. I highly recommend you to go through that video first. I will add the link in the description. In today's video, we will shift our focus to CSS now. We will start from very basic to we will move to the advanced concepts. In this video, we will cover everything you need to know about the CSS for styling your web pages and creating highly polished websites. We will start from very basics like what is CSS, why we need it. Then we will look into the selectors, their properties, values. After that, we will look into the text element like colors, background colors, what is padding, margin, box model. We will also cover the required styling for your list element, forms element, tables. We will also cover the CSS positioning, CSS animation, transition, transformation, along with that multiple advanced concept. However, as a part of this video, we will not cover CSS Grid, CSS Flex, and responsive web design. In this video, we will focus on understanding the core concept first, and in upcoming videos, we will look into the advanced CSS concept. Before starting actual CSS, first let's understand or just recap the three web development core concept, that is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We will understand why exactly we will need those. Then we will work on local setup, and then we will start our CSS development. When we creating any of the website or web application, we need to consider three fundamental front-end core concept, that is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The HTML is responsible for structure of your web page. The CSS is responsible for styling your web page, and the JavaScript is responsible for adding the logic or functionality to your web page. In our HTML5 video, we discuss these three core concepts with the help of car example. When we compare car with our HTML web page, creating the skeleton of car, that means defining where your wheels will go, where your engine, steering, or seat will go, that is defined by the HTML. Here we just creating the structure of our car or web page. In case of a web page, we need to define where your heading will go, where your footer, link, images, logo, or content of web page will go. Now structure is created. We created the structure of our car, and now CSS comes in picture. The CSS is responsible for defining the styling of your car or web page. In case of car, it will define the color of your car, then color of your wheel. It will define the dashboard color. It will define the seat color. It will define the decoration or design of your car. Then in case of a website, the CSS will define the color, background color, spacing, font, layout, and other styling aspect of our web page. Now structure is created, styling is done, but we need to add the functionality. In case of car is ready, but without adding any functionality, that car is not in use, right? And here JavaScript will comes in picture. JavaScript will define how to start or stop your car. It will define how to start or stop headlight. It will define your dashboard, all the logic and functionality of your car. In case of web page, it will define the user events, handling the animation or updating the web page without full reload. All those functionalities are handled by the JavaScript. Let's take one more example of house, right? When we are building the house, first we need to define the structure. That means we need to define where your door, windows, or wall of your house. That is defining the structure, and that is managed by the HTML in case of web page. Now structure of house is created, but adding the paint, decoration and design, that is done by the CSS. And finally, once our house is ready, we need to add multiple functionality to it, right? We need to add the fan, we need to add the lights, we can have the refrigerator, and all those functionalities are managed by the JavaScript. That means when we switch on or switch off the button, your light or fan should switch off or switch on. So adding that interactivity or functionality is done by the JavaScript. Hope you are clear with use of HTML, CSS and JavaScript with the help of car and house example. The HTML is responsible for structure, the CSS is responsible for styling, and the JavaScript is responsible for adding the logic or functionality to your web page. Hope you are clear with the role of HTML, CSS and JavaScript in the web development. And now we will move to the next and most important part, that is local setup. When we talk about the local setup, we need something to write our code, and we need a browser to display our web page. This is the important step, and we will require this for our development before moving the changes to production. In this local environment, we can write our code, we can test our code, we can do the modification and much more thing. If you watched my HTML5 videos, there we have discussed local setup by using Notepad++ and VS Code. But in today's implementation, we will only go with VS Code, because if you go with the VS Code provide us lot of feature to make our development much more easier. To start with the VS Code, first we need to download it. We just need to type VS Code in the Chrome, VS Code download, and it will give the first result. That is, the website is code.visualstudio.com. This is the official website for the Visual Studio, and here we have multiple options to download it. We can download it for Windows, Linux or Mac OS, and we have different options. Like we can use the user installer, we can have the system installer, we can go with the zip file or CLI. Let me go with the user installer. This is the simplest option. Once we click on that, it will start downloading your VS Code. Wait until it's download, and once downloaded, we just need to double click on it. We need to follow the default instruction. This is the simple step, and hope you will not face any issues with downloading and installing VS Code. Once VS Code is downloaded and installed, you will see the screen something like this. You might not see this recent section because I am working on VS Code from long back, and I will see the recent open file here. But you definitely see this start section, right? Here we can add the new file, we can open the existing file, or we can open the existing folder. Here we also have option to clone the Git repository, and we will understand that in more detail later. Also, if you go to the top, you will see the different option available. We have option to add the new file. We can open the existing file and we can open the folder. For our today's implementation, I created a complete new folder on my desktop, that is the CSS, and for now I will open this folder. I have opened this folder. Let me close this, and now you will see this folder is available here, that is CSS, and I will write all my files and folder inside it now. To add the file, we need to click on this file add button, and the first file we will add index.html. As we discussed, HTML is responsible for creating the skeleton of your web page, and then we are applying CSS on that skeleton. That's why when we are going with CSS implementation, first we need to create our skeleton, and that is done with the help of HTML. Now we just need to type HTML here, and if you go with the VS Code, it will give option of emit abbreviation here. That means when I click on this HTML5, it will give you all the initial required boilerplate code. This is our initial boilerplate code with the doc type. Then at root level, we have a HTML element. Then our HTML page is divided into two parts, that is head section and body section. Let me update this title. It could be a CSS course, and I will give one h1 tag here. And here I will add best CSS course. Let me save these changes. Now we want to run our application or run our HTML file, right? And for that we have two options. Either we can directly go to the CSS folder and double click on this index.html, and it will open our HTML file. But if you go with this kind of approach, we have multiple drawbacks, right? The first thing, we are not using the live server. We don't have the automatic reload available. That means whenever I am updating my page, each time we need to come to the browser and refresh our page to see the latest changes. But if you go with the VS Code options, right? In VS Code, we have multiple options. Let me close this. And if you go with VS Code live server option, as we discussed in the HTML course, if you go to the extension and search for live server, right? We have option of live server here. This is my live server and it is from Ritvik Day. I already installed it, but if you haven't installed it, you can install it. Once you install it, in the bottom right corner, you have an option to go live. And when we click on this go live, it will basically start your server and it will open your HTML page in the browser. If you look at here, now we have some local IP address, that is the local host, and our application is running on some port. And we have the h1 tag here. When we go with the VS Code, we have multiple benefits. The first thing, it is lightweight and very fast. Then second one, it is highly configurable. That means we can add the different theme and the required extension here. Like live server, we can have the prettier our code. We can have the ESLint to highlight the error in our code along with multiple options. Then it having the built-in integration with Git. If you're familiar with the Git, like Git is version control system, and we can integrate our VS Code directly with Git to push our code to GitHub. Then it will provide the IntelliSense, right? It will give you the auto suggestion. Like if you go here and if I just type greater than sign, it will give you us the multiple HTML tag. It could be a canvas, code, data, DD. It is used for table, then delete, and many more options. That way it will provide the IntelliSense and it will auto complete our code if necessary. After that, it having the integrated terminal. If I do the control and tilde sign, you will see the terminal available here. And here we will see the multiple options. Like we have the debug console, then we have the terminal here. If you go to the terminal, again, we have different terminal options available here. Like we can go with multiple terminal. When you are working on multiple applications and if you want to run multiple application at a time, then you will understand more on the terminal part. After that, it will support for multiple languages, and most important in our case, it will give us the live server extension. Also, it will provide the image abbreviation. Like when I just type the HTML, it will give me all the initial boilerplate code. Hope you are clear with VS Code, and now we will start our CSS development. Now we are ready to start our CSS development. Officially, welcome to our CSS complete course, and in this course we will understand the CSS from basics to advanced level. By end of this video, you will having all the required knowledge to start your CSS development, and you can style any website at border level. So without any delay, let's begin with our CSS understanding. When we talk about the CSS, we officially called it as a cascading style sheet. Style is simple, right? We know style is for polishing our web page. But what is meaning of cascading here? The cascading means when we are working with CSS, we can have multiple rules. There are different types of CSS. We can apply internal CSS, external CSS. We can also go with the multiple CSS files. And for one element, we can have multiple matching rules. When we have multiple rule on the same element, right, then browser will determine which rule should apply on the web page. And that is what cascading is. For now, understanding the cascading will be difficult. We will understand more around that when we proceed in our video. If you look at here, CSS stands for cascading style sheet. It is the styling language used to describe the style of the document. Then it controls the layout, design, and visual appearance of the web pages, allowing you to separate the content HTML from the style. Here we have few important keywords. It controls the layout of your web page, then it will design our web page, and if you look at here, it will separate the HTML and CSS. That means if you go with the external CSS, that is the recommended way to have separate HTML and separate CSS file. That way we will separate our HTML code from the CSS, and we will understand how exactly we can link those. We know that CSS is used for styling, but let's understand that with the help of one example, how important CSS is in any of the application. For local setup, we see the website of the Visual Studio Code, right? So let's go on that website now and see how exactly CSS is applied there. In Visual Studio Code website, you are seeing the beautiful website here, right? We have logo on the top, we have the top navigation, then we have H1 here, we have different images, and if you go below, this website is really looking beautiful. Every element is arranged in proper format. Let's inspect the element. When we inspect the element, basically we will see all the code available on this particular page. If you go ahead, we know that HTML is the root element of everything. On top, we have the doc type. Then we have the HTML element, and inside it, we have two elements. The first one is head, which contain all the metadata information, our JavaScript files, as well as our CSS files. And if you look at the body will contain all the content visible on the screen. If I go inside the head tag and look for the CSS here, you will see the couple of CSS files are added here. The one is bootstrap.main.css and another one is style.css. So these are the external CSS file and contain all the required rule to make your page beautiful. Now let me remove both the style and we will see the difference on your web page. Let me remove the bootstrap first. For that, I will click on delete element. You will see the look and feel of the page is changed little bit. And now let me remove the style.css as well. Once I remove this, you will see our page is now completely messed. And that's why the CSS plays very important role in styling your web page. We are only having the HTML here and we are creating the structure of our page. But we don't have CSS here. And see how your page is looking. If you come down, you will see the Windows 10 here. Then we have a different installer. If you come down, see how big this logo is looking. This is the logo of X, right? You will see how site is changed. Let me refresh and now you will see our site is looking beautiful again because CSS is applied on this page now. Hope you are clear with the importance of CSS on the web page. Now let's move to the CSS syntax. Understanding the CSS syntax is very simple. We need to understand few of the things first. First, we have a selector. Selector means any HTML element, right? We can have the H1 tag, we can have the P tag, it could be an image, it could be the anchor tag. Here we are selecting the selector first or our element first. And on that element, we need to apply multiple CSS rules. Adding the rules are simple again. We need to use the opening and closing curly bracket, and inside it we can have the multiple rules. Basically, those rules we called it as a declaration, and we can have one or multiple rules here. Those rules are available as a property and a value pair. The property are predefined properties. It could be a color, it could be a font, and the list goes on. We have n number of properties. We don't need to remember all the properties. As we go in this video or as you practice, you will easily able to recall or understand those properties. And for each property, we can have the different values. Just to understand, we are taking one selector here, that is div. As we discussed in our HTML course, the div is block element and it is non-semantic element, and it is used to group the multiple elements together. Here we have a div as a selector. Then we have opening and closing curly bracket, and inside that we have multiple declarations. The first declaration or the property is color, and for that we have value as a red. That means for our div we will give the color as a red, and we will give font size as a 30 pixel. Font size means how big we want to show that text. After property we need to give the colon, and after value we need to give the semicolon. Let's move to the VS Code and understand this syntax with the help of example. In VS Code, we already created our HTML file, and in this HTML file we have one H1 tag here, that is best CSS course. And now let's add some CSS on this H1 element. If I go to the browser, we will see the HTML H1 element looks in black color. Let me go to the VS Code and I will add some style to it. For understanding, I will add the inline CSS here, and for that we need to use the style tag. The style tag should be present in our header section of the HTML, and inside this now I will add my CSS. First we need to select the selector, and the selector is H1 here. So I just need to type the H1. It is my selector. Now we need to type the opening and closing tag, and here we will add our CSS rules now. The first property I will use color here, and as soon as I start typing, you will see the VS Code is providing you all the possible properties here. Let me add the color first, and color I can go with any kind of color, right? For that, let me go with the red color, and you will see the red color is available here. Let's save the changes, and now if I go to the browser, you will see our H1 tag shown in the red color. Hope you understand how CSS is playing important role in the web development. Now let me add one more property, and for now I will go with font here. If you go with the font, we will see multiple font properties available here. Font family, font size, to increase or decrease the size of your element. Then we have font weight, font style, and many more things. For now, let me go with the font size, and I will go with 50 pixel for now. Let me save the changes, and now if I go to the browser, we will see the size of our H1 is increased to 50 pixel. And this is how we can add the different selector and rule in our CSS. Let me add one more element here. Now we have the H1 tag, and let me add div tag here. Div, and I will give some description. This is CSS course. And if I go to the browser, you will see text is available here. I will add some styling to it. We need to select this div selector, and here I will add that div now. Whenever we are adding the style on any element, we need to add the fresh entry here. We need to add the style on div element now. And first, let me add the color here. Let me go with the green color for now. We have list of n number of colors here. For now, we are just going with the color name, but we have different color options available. We can go with the RGB values. We can go with the hex values. We will understand them in the upcoming part of this video. For now, I am going with the green color, and I will increase the font to 20 pixel. And you will see our div color is changed to green, and the font is increased to 20 pixel. Let me add background color as well. And to add the background color, we just need to type the background here, and we will see possible background properties available. First, let me go with the background color. Background color, we again have the different options here, right? And for now, let me go with the chocolate color here. If I go to the browser, you will see our div is now having background color as a chocolate here. Let me change this font color so that it looks better. The green color is not looking good on our background color, and for that I can go with the color as a white here. You will see the font color is now changed to white. And this is how we can add the different selectors, then different declaration, including properties and values, and we can have the multiple properties on the same rule. Hope you are clear with initial basic CSS syntax. Now let's move to the next section of our course, and here we will understand the different way to include the CSS on our web page. When we want to add the CSS on our web page, we have three options available. The first one is inline CSS, then we have internal CSS, and the third one and most appropriate and recommended way is external CSS. When we go with the inline CSS, we are adding the CSS style on element itself. That means here I am having the HTML element. This is my H1 element. Here we have some content to it, and here I am having the closing tag. And inside our HTML element, same as attribute, we are using style attribute here, and we are assigning some properties and value to it. Here on our H1 element, we are applying some style, that is color, and we are assigning the color value to red here. When we go with the inline CSS, we need to understand the rule is applied on only single element. To understand that, let's move to the VS Code, and we will get better understanding. In VS Code, let me remove all the style now, and we will add style on our H1 element, and it would be inline CSS. For that, I need to use the style attribute here. I can add the properties and values. Let me add the color property, and the color could be red here. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, we will see the color of the H1 is updated to red now. Same way, if I add one more H1 element, let me add the one more H1 element here, and if I remove the styling and save the changes, you will see the style is applied only on first H1 element, because we are using the inline CSS here. When we are going with inline CSS, the most important point is it will apply the CSS to single element only. Now let's move to the second option, and that is internal CSS. When we go with the internal CSS, we need to add the CSS in header section of our web page. That means we need to add the style tag inside the header section of our HTML page, and inside we can add the different rule. If you look at here, we have a style tag, and inside that I have a h1 element, and I am assigning some properties and values to it. When we are going with internal CSS, it will apply the CSS for multiple element, but only on single page. Just to understand, let's go to the VS Code. In VS Code, we have two h1 element here. For now, let me remove this heading now. For now, let me remove this inline CSS, and we will add the style in head section now. Let me remove this as well, and here we need to add the style tag. It would be a style. Here we have the opening and closing tag, and we need to make sure it is present inside the head section. Here we need to add the CSS on this both h1 element, and for that I just need to select the element that is h1, and on this h1 now I can add the CSS. Let me add the color, and the color could be red here. Let's save the changes, and now we will understand the difference. The CSS is applied on the both h1 element. Hope you are clear with internal CSS. Internal and inline CSS was used previously, but now we are using the third and most recommended way, that is external CSS. When we go with the external CSS, it will separate our HTML and CSS code. And also when we have the CSS code in the separate file, we can go with the multiple optimization when we are moving our changes to production. We can minify the CSS, we can optimize the CSS, we can leverage the option of caching, but that is the advanced part, and we will understand that later. Now let's move to the third option, and that is external CSS. The things are very simple. We need to create the separate file. The separate file will be created, and that file extension will be .css, and we will add all the rule inside that CSS file, and finally we will link our CSS file in the HTML, so that whatever rule we have added in the CSS file, that will be applied on our HTML element. So let's understand that in action now. For that, let me go to the VS Code. Now in VS Code, first let me remove this internal CSS, and we will add one complete new file here, and it could be anything, any name of your choice, but I am going with style.css. Once we add this file, we will see the icon is updated with CSS here, and now we can add our CSS rule here. If you go to the HTML file, we need to add the CSS on our h1 element. For that, let me copy that element, and we just need to use the h1 element here. Then we have a opening and closing curly bracket, and here we can use the color. Color could be red. Let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see CSS is not updated here, and because we need to link this CSS file in our index.html file, and for that things are very simple. In our head section, we need to use the link tag. It is link tag, and it will take one attribute, that is href, and in href we need to provide a path of our CSS file. It is simple. We have the CSS file on the same folder location, so I will just use the style.css here. We need to use one more property here, and that is rel. It will be a relation, and we need to use the style sheet here. Let me close this, save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see CSS is applied now. Just for understanding, let me go to the CSS file and update this color to green, and we will see once I to the browser, our changes are updated as expected. And when we are going with the external CSS, like using the separate CSS file, we can apply the same CSS rule on entire website. We can have the multiple pages, like here we just have the index.html, right? We can have the product.html, we can have the payment.html, we can have multiple HTML file, but we can go with the same CSS file and we can use the same CSS rule for h1 tag across the website. Hope you are clear with what is inline CSS, internal CSS, and external CSS. As I mentioned, we can use same CSS file on the multiple pages. We can also have vice versa, right? We can have the multiple CSS file on same HTML page. Like when we have the big website and the page is divided into multiple sections, like we can have header, we can have the footer, we can have the navigation menu, we can have the content, and we can use the different CSS file to add the style for each section. And then we can link all those CSS into our web page. Just for understanding, let me add one more CSS file and I will use it as a style1.css. I'm just going with the simple name for now, but we need to go with the better naming convention when we are working on actual project. Let me add a new CSS file in our h1 page. Again, it would be a link. We need to use the href here, and in href now we have style1.css. Relation will be style sheet. Let me close it, save the changes, and now in the style1 we can add some CSS. Let me add CSS on h1 element again, and here we will go with color as a blue. Let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see the color is applied as a blue here. Initially the color was green in our first CSS file, but now in the second file we have the color as a blue, and new color is applied on all h1 element. And that is what cascading or specificity is. The browser will determine which rule we need to apply on the element. If you go to our HTML file, you will see the style1.css we are using later, and that's why it is taking the CSS rule for h1 from our second style sheet. Let me just change the sequence and we will see the difference now. First, let's go with the style1 and then go with the style now. Let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see it is taking green color now. Here we just adding the two CSS file, and the rule which is coming last, that is applied on the web page. But we have multiple different selectors. Right now we are just understanding the element selector, but we have ID selector, class selector, and based on selector we are using the rule or the CSS we are applying on the element may change. Hope you are clear with what is inline, internal, external CSS, how we can apply those on the web page, and how the cascading rule are applied if you go with the different CSS rule or CSS files. Now let's move to our next part of video, and that is understanding the different types of selector. For now we just went with the element selector, but depending on our requirement we can have the multiple selector. Like we might be having the requirement that multiple element on our web page should have a same styling. In that case we can go with the class selector. Then we might be having the requirement that only one element should have the specific style. In that case we can go with the ID selector, and we can have a requirement that multiple elements could have the same styling. In that case we can go with the grouping selector. Let's understand all those selector in detail now. When we talk about the CSS selector, those are used to add some styling on HTML element. And the first selector is universal selector. When we talk about the universal selector, we basically indicating that by using star, and it is used to apply the same styling on all the elements of our web page. Then second selector we have as a element selector. We already discussed what element selector is, right? It selects all the element of the specific type. That means we can select h1 element, and when we apply some CSS, it is applied to all the h1 on that web page. After that, we have a class selector. The class selector is used to select all the elements with specific class attribute. That means in our HTML, we can add the class attribute on different elements, and when we are applying a CSS on them, all those elements having the class attribute with a particular value, the CSS will get applied on them. And the class attribute can be accessed by using the dot operator in CSS. Then we have a ID selector. Generally, we are using ID selector to apply the CSS on single element itself. And that is what we are using ID. ID is basically used to uniquely identify the element on your document or web page. When we want to apply the styling with ID, we need to use the hash operator. And finally, we can have the grouping of selector. That means we can have the multiple selector like p tag, h1 tag, or we can have the some element with the class attribute or ID attribute, right? We might want to apply the same styling to multiple elements, and in this case, we can go with the grouping selector. We just need to add all the selector by using the comma, and same CSS will be applied on all the elements. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand all this selector in action. In VS Code, currently we have two h1 tag, right? We will keep those h1 tag as it is. We have one div element, and I will add one more element, that is paragraph. This is best CSS course. I have added some description on it, and now first we will understand what is universal selector is. As we discussed, we can have the universal selector with star keyword, and then we can add some CSS to it. It will add the same CSS on all the elements of the web page. Let's save the changes, and we will understand what universal selector is doing. So what it did, it basically add same green color on all the elements of our web page, whether it is a h1, whether it is a div or paragraph. And that is what universal selector is. Generally, we are not using universal selector. If you want to add some styling at common level, generally we have the container component or the container element, or we can directly apply them on body. Now let's move to the next selector, and that is element selector. We already discussed what element selector is. We can select the element from here, and we can add the same styling on all that element of same type. Here I am using the h1 element, and when I save the changes, you will see the green color is only applied to on all the h1 element on our web page. Similarly, we can select the different element here. I can go with the p element, and I can add color as a red here. Let's save the changes, and you will see the paragraph is updated with red color now, and that is what element selector is. Now let's understand class selector. When we talk about the class selector, let me go to the HTML file and let me add two more h1 tag here. Suppose we have 4 h1 tag, and we need to apply some styling to first 2 h1 tag, and in this case we can go with the class selector. Going with class selector is very simple. We need to add the class attribute here, and we need to provide some value to it. Value could be anything. I'm going with heading here, and same class name I can apply to another h1 tag. It is heading. If you look at here, my first 2 h1 element is having the class attribute, and the class attribute value is heading here. I will go to the CSS, and for that we need to use the dot attribute here. dot attribute, then we need to provide the value of that class name, and then we can add the CSS here. Let me add color to blue here. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, we will see the first two h1 element is updated with blue color, and that is what class selector is. After that, let's understand ID selector. ID selector is used to apply the unique styling on a single element. Let me go with single styling for last h1, and here I can add the ID attribute. And the ID attribute, we can go with any name. It could be a unique heading. Yeah, let's copy this, save the changes, go to our CSS file, and we can access ID selector by using hash now. We need to give the name of our selector, and here I can give any kind of CSS. For now, I'm just going with the color, and color I can go pink. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see the fourth h1 element is updated with pink color by using ID selector. Now we have one more thing, and that is grouping selector. When we are going with the grouping selector, it will add same styling to all the elements, or all the elements we are using in that grouping. Suppose if I go here and I want to add the same styling for my div and p tag, what I will do, I will just go to the CSS. I already have the CSS for p tag. I will give comma here, and I will add my div element. Let's save the changes, and now what it will do, it will add the same styling to my paragraph as well as div element. And here we can have any combination. We just need to use the comma separated values, and we can use the heading as well here, right? We can also go with the class selector. Let me give the comma here, and if I remove this blue color, you will see the paragraph, div, and all the elements with heading class will be in the red color now. You will see first two h1 element is having the class, and here we have the paragraph and div, and all those four elements is now having the red color, and that is what grouping of selector is. Hope you are clear with basic selector, like what is universal selector, what is element, ID, class, and CSS grouping selector is. Now we are having some advanced selector. We will look into those in later this video, because we need some more understanding on CSS to understand those selector. It could be a combinator selector, it could be an attribute selector, it could be a pseudo classes or pseudo elements. But that is an advanced topic, and we will understand more on that as we proceed in this video. Hope you are clear with all the selector. And now let's move to the one of the important concept, and that is selector specificity. When we talk about the CSS specificity, we often called it as the hierarchy. And if you look at here, rule with highest specificity will win in case of multiple CSS rule applied on the same element. That means now we are going with different selectors, right? We have the element selector, we have the ID selector, class selector, and we might be having the chances that single element can have multiple styling. This is generally happen when our project is bigger. On same element, we might be having the element CSS, ID CSS, or class CSS. And in this case, we cannot go with all the styling, right? We need to choose only one styling, and that styling is chosen based on the specificity. And the specificity is decided based on which selector we are using. For now, let's skip about not important. We will understand more on this. But if you look at here, we have a inline CSS, right? And that is having the highest priority. Then we have a ID selector. Then after that, we have a class selector. Then we have the attribute selector, and the lowest priority is for element selector. When we talk about the specificity, the highest specificity is for inline CSS. Then we have the specificity for ID selector. Then we have a class selector. Then we have a attribute selector, and the lowest specificity is for element selector. Let's move to the VS Code and understand the specificity with the help of example now. To understand the specificity, let me only go with single element, that is the h1 element, and for now let me remove the class attribute as well. In CSS, I will only give the CSS on element itself and let save the changes. When we are going with the element, it's having the lowest specificity. We have only single rule on our h1 element. That's why it will take the green color. Now let's add the class attribute to our h1 element. Let me add the class attribute. Class would be heading here. Let's save the changes, and in CSS file, let's add CSS on my class attribute now. It is heading, and then we will give color as a red here. And if I go to the browser, you will see color is updated to red now. And here you might be saying that, as we discussed, the rule which is coming last, which will be applied on the element, right? And that is the case when we are going with same kind of selector. Let me just cut it for your understanding and add it before our h1 element. Let's save the changes, and the heading or the class attribute is having the more specificity over the element, so that it will keep our red color to h1 element as it is. The element selector is having the lowest, and on top of that we have the class selector. Now let's add ID selector as. When we want to add the ID selector, let me add the ID here, and the ID I can go with unique heading, right? Let's use it, and I will add it before our class attribute. It is starting with hash, and now I will give color as a blue here. Let's save the changes. Let's save HTML file as well. And if I go to the browser, you will see now CSS is updated to blue color because our ID selector is taking higher precedence over element and class selector. After that, let's understand the inline styling as well. We already discussed what inline styling is. It is applied on the single element, and we need to use the style attribute here. Style equal to, and we can go with color as a pink here. And in this case, inline CSS will take the higher precedence over our ID selector. If I go to the browser, you will see now our color gets updated to pink. And that is what CSS specificity is. The inline CSS is having higher precedence, then we have ID, then we have a class, and then we have attribute, and finally we have element. Hope you are clear with specificity. And now let's understand what is not important is. When we are using the not important, it is basically used to override CSS or give more importance to that particular CSS rule. If you look at here, we have inline CSS now, and this CSS is taking higher precedence. And after that, we have a precedence for ID, then we have a precedence for heading, and finally we have a precedence for element. And now if I add not important here, not important means what I am doing, I am giving higher importance to this particular rule. Let's save the changes, and now if I go to the browser, you will see our h1 color is updated to red now. And that is what use of not important is. Not important attribute we can add end of the CSS rule, and it is used to take the higher precedence or override any CSS rule. Generally, it is not recommended to override the CSS, but in few cases, we might be having the use cases. We might be using some third-party library and we want to override their CSS, then we can go with the not important property. Hope you are clear with CSS specificity. After specificity, let's move to the next section of our video, and that is HTML colors. When we talk about any color system, it is a combination of three primary color, that is red, green, and blue. With these three color, we can form any required color as per the requirement. And when we talk about the CSS, it is also combination of three main color, that is RGB, And considering those three colors, we have a different way to style the HTML element. Here we will talk four different ways. The first is directly with color. That means when we set the color property, right, we can directly set the color name. And that is the basic and most used way at initial level. When we are using CSS, we are using some predefined color names, and those are case sensitive. In our video till now, we are doing the same thing. We are using the color property and we are setting the value as a color name. It could be a red, green, blue, or any other color. Second and most used and recommended way is the hex color. When we talk about the hex color, it is created considering the hexadecimal number system, and it is the combination of three colors. We have the red, green, and blue, and each color is specifying the 2-digit starting from 00, and the max value can reach to FX. We have 2-digit for red, 2-digit for green, and 2-digit for blue. That way it forms the 6-digit color. When we talk about the hex colors, color can be specified using the hexadecimal codes, which is 6-digit code representing the red, green, and blue component of the colors. Then we have a third way, that is RGB notation. When we are going with the RGB notation, we are using the RGB function and we need to pass three different values to it. The first one is red, the second one is green, and the third one is blue. And the value is starting from 0, that is minimum, and the maximum it could go to 255 for all the three colors. RGB notation color model define the color based on the intensity of red, green, and blue light. And now finally we have HSL notation. When we talk about the HSL notation, it is again combination of a three primary color, and it stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. This model describes the color in terms of their shade, that means hue, HUE. Then we have intensity, that is a saturation, and then we have a brightness, that is lightness. And we need to define those three values and pass it to the HSL function. These are the four and most used way to add the CSS into our web page. And now let's understand all those with the help of example. In VS Code, to explain the color in the HTML, I have created a little bit HTML code here. We have a h1 tag. We have given the class as a heading 1 here, and the content will be basic color. Then I'm using a div tag which is used to container for other element, and I'm using class name as a description 1 here. And inside that I have a paragraph which will define some information about the basic color. Same way I have a second h1 tag that define the hex color, and we have a div which basically wrap around the different p tags. And here p tags which contain the information about the hex color system that we just discussed. Similarly, we have for RGB notation, and we have the h1 tag for HSL. If we look at here, the structure is exactly same for all the four elements. Initially, we have a h1 which contain the class attribute. Then we have a div which having again the class, and inside the div we have multiple p elements. And when we go to the style.css, here I am just using the font size as a 18 pixel, and we are using the style on div element, so it will be applicable to div as well as all the p tag inside it. When I go to the browser, first we have the basic color, then we have a hex color, after that we have a RGB notation, and finally we have a HSL color. And we will apply all the different four ways of color one by one here and see exactly how those are differ from each other. Let me start with the basic color first. When you go to the index.html, I have heading 1 here, and for description, we have a description 1 as a class. In CSS, let me add that heading 1 here, and I will add color property. The color property, I can give any predefined color. I'm going with the red color, and if I go to the browser, we will see the basic color is applied to red here, and that is what predefined color is. I'm going with predefined color red here. Same way I can go with any color. We have white, blue, and the list goes on. When we are using this color, generally we are applying a color on three things. The first thing is the text color, the second one will be the background color, and the third we are using to give the border color. This is the three main areas when we are using the CSS colors. Now let's add color to this description as well, and for that I will use class as a description 1 here. Let me use color property, and it could be a green. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see there is not changed because we might be misspelled our description. For that, let's copy this description 1, and if I add here, you will see now green color should be applied on our description. That way we can add the predefined colors. Let me add color to background as well. Let's use the background color here, and the color background color I can go with gray now. Let's save the changes. You will see the background color is in gray color. Let me update the description color to white so it will look better. Let's save the changes, and now if I go to the browser, you will see the H1 color is red, description color is white, and the background color is gray. And that's how we can add the predefined color in the HTML. Hope you are clear with that. After predefined color, let's discuss hex color now. When we are going with hex color, the hex color is specified as a combination of red, green, and blue color, where RR stand for red, GG stand for green, and BB stand for blue. It is combination of 6-digit color. The first 2 digit represent the red color, second 2 digit represent the green color, and the last 2 digit represent the blue color. The color is starting with hash, and then we have 6-digit color here. The value of red color is starting from 00, and the max value would be FF. Then same for green and blue. And when we talk about the single value, it is from 0, and max can go to the F. That means we have a 16 different values, 0 to 9 and A to F. You will understand that very easily if you know the hexadecimal number system. Then we are using the combination of these 3 color. We can use the any combination, and some example could be if we go with all 6 digit as a 0, then we are forming the black color. If you're using all the 6 digit as a FFFF, that is maximum value, then we are forming the white color. Now let's move to the VS Code and start working on hex color implementation. For that, first let me take the heading 2 here, and we will add the hex color on it. Let me use the dot. Then we have a heading 2 as a class here, and then we will use property as a color. And now we need to use the hex color here. We know hex color is a combination of RR, then GG and BB. In the RR, we can go with any color, that is from 00 to FF. For now, let me add the FF for RR. FF means maximum color. And for green, let me add 00. And also for blue, let me add 00. And it will form me the red color. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see H1 color is in red now. Instead of red, let me use the different color. Let me go with the green color, or when we click on this color icon, we have combination of any color here. Let me go with some green color, and when we go with the green color, generally the 3rd and 4th digit will be on higher side, and the value of red and blue will be on lower side. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, we have the green color for our H1 element, and that is in hex format. Let me also change the color of description now. For that, let me use the description 2 class here, and we can use any hex color. Let me use the hash here, and now let me go with the blue color. For that, we need to use 00 for red, 00 for green, and FF for blue. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, we will see description is in the blue color now. Let me add some background as well. If you add background little bit of white, that will be look good here, and for that, let me use the background color. We can go with the white color, and white color will be indicated by all our F here. Instead of using complete white color, let me use some reddish color here. Yeah, let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see some reddish color is applied as a background color here. And all those three color, right, whether the color of text here, the color of description, and the color of background are in the hex format. All the three colors are now in the hex format. It is combination of 6 digit. Hope you are clear with hex color code. After hex color code, let's start with the RGB notation. When we are going with the RGB notation, again, it is the combination of three color, that is red, green, and blue. In RGB notation, color can be specified as RGB values using the formula. Here we are using the RGB formula, and we can pass three different values to it. The first value will be red, the second value would be green, and the third value will be blue here. And those red, green, and blue values are number, and that is from 0 to 255. The 0 means minimum value, 255 means maximum value. The example would be RGB, and here we are using all the three colors as a 0, 0, 0. We can go with any number here from 0 to 255 for red, green, and blue. And after that, we have one more variant. Here we can add the fourth parameter, and that is alpha, and alpha is used for adding the opacity on your element. Now let's move to the VS Code, and let's understand with different color code. And one more thing, when we are going with alpha, the alpha value is between 0 to 1, and we can use any decimal number in between that. In the VS Code, for RGB notation, I am using the class as a heading 3. Let's go to the CSS and add CSS on this heading 3 class. Let me use the property as a color here, and now I will use RGB formula here. It taking the three different values, that is red, then we have a green, and third one we have blue here. Let's add color now. The first value I can go with RGB, and it could be anything. Let me go with 255 for now. For green, let me go with 125, and for blue, let me go with 0 here. It would be RGB. That's why it's not showing you the color. Once we are going with the RGB, it will show you something yellow color here. And if you look at here, we have RGB. The red will be 255. Green will be 125, and for blue we are going with 0 value, and which is forming the yellow color for us. Let me remove the first line. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see third heading will be in the yellow color, and that is in the RGB notation way. Now let's add color to our description as well, and for that we will use description 3 here. Let me use the color property, and then we will use RGB, and here we can set the different color. For R, let me go with 0. For green, let me go with 125, and for blue, let me go with 125. Let's save the changes, and it will form you the color something like navy blue. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the description is in blue color. Let me add background color as well. To add the background color, we will use property background color. Let me use RGB here, and we will set background color with value 125 for everything. Let's see how this color will look. It is in the grayish color, and if you go to the browser, the background color is applied here. Let me use some different color so that we will understand the fourth attribute as well. Yeah, I'm going with red color here, and now let's understand the fourth attribute as well, and that is alpha. When I'm going with the alpha here, we can set the value between 0 and 1 here. If I go with 0, that means it will make our background completely transparent. If I go with 1, it will keep our background in the red color. And if I go with any value in between, if I go with 0.3, then it will show our red color in the different way. Basically, it's adding the opacity. If I go with 0.7, then we have red color in different format. That is how we are adding the opacity on the element. The opacity is very useful when we are using the multiple element and they are overlapping on each other, or we want to reduce the opacity of some color. Hope you are clear with RGB notation color. Now let's understand the fourth and last way, that is in HSL notation. Color can be specified using the view, that is HUE. Then we have the saturation and lightness in the form of, again we have the formula here. Here we will use the HSL, that is view, saturation and lightness. When we are going with the view value, it is in between 0 to 360. 0 means red color, 120 means green color, and 240 means blue color here. Then saturation will be defined in percentage, and it is from 0 to 100. 0 means it is in the shade of gray, and 100 means full color. And third parameter is lightness. That is again in the percentage, and it is from 0 to 100%. When we go with 0%, it is the black color. When we are going with 50%, it is neither complete light or complete dark. And when I'm going with 100%, it is white color. Let's move to the VS Code and understand with the help of implementation. If I go to the HTML file, we are using the class as a heading 4 for our HSL heading. And let me go to the CSS and start adding the CSS on my heading 4. The property will be a color, and we will use HSL here. The first value would be the view value, and which is in between 0 to 360. Let me go with any value. I will go with 75. Then second one will be the saturation. It is in the percentage. Let me go with the 20% for now. And third is the lightness. Let me go with 10%. Let's save the changes. We will see the color in the gray format. Let me use the different color here. Let me use some green value. When I'm using green value, the HSL values are updated here. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see the HSL notation heading is updated to green color. Same way we can apply color to description as well. And for that, let me use the description 4 class here. And I will go with the color property, and HSL value would be anything. Let me select the color from this color picker. And now I will go with yellow color. Let me go with complete yellow color. And when I'm going with the yellow color, the view will be 58. The saturation will be 94%, and the lightness will be 45%. Let's save the changes. And if I go to the browser, you will see description in the yellow color. We are not able to see it properly. So let's add background color as well. To add the background color, let me go with the background color property, and here we will use HSL. And let's add some gray color here. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see gray as a background color is applied to our description. Hope you understand all the different way of adding the color in the HTML. The first way is the basic color, where we can go with the predefined color. It could be a red, green, blue. and we need to go with the predefined name color format. Then we have the hex color. It is the combination of a 6-digit. It is the red, green, blue color, and it's starting from 00 to max can go to FF. Then we have RGB notation. It is in the combination of a 3 color, that is red, green, blue, and we can have the value from 0 to max to 55. And last we have a HSL. Here again we are using the formula and we have 3 different values. The first one is a view, that is from 0 to 360 value. Then we have the saturation in the percentage, and third we have the lightness, that is again in the percentage. Try to implement all the 4 different ways by your own way. Use the different color combination and get more understanding around these different color system in the HTML or CSS. Now, before moving to the next part of our video, let's understand the comment in short. When we are adding the comment in the CSS or in the HTML, it is used to add the documentation. When we are adding the comment, that comment is not visible on the screen or that not impact our code. Just for understanding purpose, we are using RGB here, right? We need to use the slash here, then we need to use the star, and again we need to use the star and close our slash here, and then we can add any text in between it. It is used for a documentation purpose or understanding the detail. Let me add RGB color here, and we need to add 3 different options here, right? The first one is red, the second one is green, and the third one will be blue. Let me add those colors. We have documentation when someone is referring our code. Green, and finally we have blue here. Hope you are clear with how we can add the comment here. Let's add the comment for HSL as well, and it is going with 3 different values. It is HSL. The first one is blue, then we have saturation, that is in the percentage, and the last we have lightness. Let me close my comment. When we are adding the comment, basically it is used for your future reference and documentation purpose. And this comment code will not be visible on the browser, or it will not impact our CSS rules. If I go to the browser, you will see everything is working as expected. Hope you are clear with the comment. And now let's move to the next section of the video, where we will understand how exactly we can add the padding, margin, border. We can set the height and width to our element, and we will also understand one of the fundamental concept in the CSS, that is box model. So let's deep dive into those topics and get more understanding around our CSS course. After CSS colors, now let's move to the next section. In this section, we will understand the below CSS property that will be applied on HTML element. The first property is border. When we go with any HTML element, by default, we don't have any border to it. And we can set border to it by using the border property. After that, we have a width and height property. When we talk about any HTML element, by default, it takes automatic height that is defined by the HTML or CSS. If you go with the inline element, it will take the space only around its content. If you go with the block element, it will take 100% height of the screen. But we can set height and width as per our requirement on our HTML element. After that, we have a couple of important property, that is padding and margin, and those are used to add the space around your content and add the space around your border. And finally, we have a box model. It is formed considering your content, your padding, your border, and your margin. We will understand more around that with the help of example. Now let's start our discussion around the border. When we talk about CSS border, it is used to set the style, width, and color of elements border. Elements means any of the HTML element. If you look at here, consider we have div element, right? We have some content inside it and we can set border to it. When we talk about border, we have three important properties. The first property is border style, which will define the outlook of your border. That means how your border should look like. It is solid border. We can go with the dotted border. That means we will see the dot dot dot. Then we have a dashed border. We can have the double border, and then we can have some 3D options as well. The list is goes on. If you need more understanding around the border style, you can check the W3 school website, right? As I mentioned in our HTML course as well, this is one of the best website when we are starting with your initial journey as a front-end developer. The border style means how exactly your border will look like. Then next we have a border width. That means what is the thickness of your border. We can go with a thin, medium, or a thick. Those are some predefined values given by the CSS, and we can also explicitly add your required units. We already discussed what is pixel is, right? We can go with 1 pixel, 2 pixel, or any value as per our requirement. We also have some other units like a PT or centimeter. We will understand more around the unit in upcoming section. Border width is used to define thickness of your border. And finally, we have border color. For border color, we can go with any color option. We can go with the predefined color. We can go with the hex color. We can go with the RGB or HSL that we just discussed. When we are going with the border, it is combination of these three important properties. We also have one shorthand property, and that is just border. We can go with the border property. Consider here I am having the div element. I am going with the shorthand property as a border. The first value will be the border width, that is in the pixel. The second property will be the border style, that is solid, dotted, or we can go with anything. And the third property will be border color. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand the border property with the help of example. In VS Code, I just created a couple of elements. The first one is H1 element, and then we have a div element. The H1 element is having some heading, and the div element is having some description. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see our web page is having the heading as well as some description. And now we will add border on our H1 tag. To add the border, let me go to the CSS. When we talk about the heading, we already have the heading class here, and we will add heading on that. To add the class, we need to use the dot, and then we have the name of our class here. And here we will start adding our border. When I start typing border here, VS Code will give all the options or all the property available with the border. First, let me add the border style, and when I go with the border style, it will give me multiple options. We can have the dash border, dotted, double, groove, hidden, and other options as well, right? For now, let me go with the solid. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see the solid border is applied on our H1 element. By default, it's taking the black color, and default size I think will be 1 pixel. Now let me add the second property, and that is border width. Here I am adding the border width, and we can go with anything. For now, let me go with the predefined value, and that is thick. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the border in thick size. Let me use thin. So we have thin border here. Now we are seeing very thin border. We can also go with some unit here, and let me go with 4 pixel for now. Save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the border with thick size now. And now let's use the third property, that is border color. Border color, we can go with the predefined value and it could be red now. We will see our heading border is now in red color. Basically, border is used to set the style, width and color of the element border. Element, in our case, we have a H1 here. After that, we have multiple other property as well, right? Let me go with the border and we will see multiple properties available here. Here now I will go just with border property and it is used to add the shorthand for all those three. Here we need to set the width first, that will be a 4 pixel. Then I will add the style here and then I can add green color here. Let's save the changes. We need to remove the first three because that is added in the shorthand property now. Let's save the changes and if you go to the browser, you will see our border is width solid 4 pixel and green in color. When we are going with border property, it will add border from all the 4 sides. But we also have option to add border from only one side, right? Suppose we have the requirement to add border only from left side and we can do that. If you look at here, we have some small border here, right? We can also go with only right. Let's save the changes. If you look at here, border is available here because our H1 element is taking the 100% width of our screen. Just to understand the border, let me also add some background color. We will understand that in better. Background color, and let me go with some light color here. It could be pink. Let's save the changes. And now we will see our H1 is taking the entire width and we have a small border. Instead of right, let's add border bottom. Now border will be added from bottom side. Hope you are able to understand what is border, what are the different properties. We can have the style, we can have the color, we can have the width. We can set the border from all the 4 sides or any side as per our requirement. We might be going with different border option at the bottom, different border option at the top. Now let me add the border again and we will understand one more property, and that is border radius. When we want to go with the rounded corner, in that case we need to use the border radius property, and let me use that now. It is border radius and we can set it in percentage or pixel. Let me go with the 10 pixel for now. Let's save the changes and we will see the corner of our border is now rounded. If you go with larger value, maybe 50 pixel, then you will see the corner is more rounded, and that is what border radius is. If you need more understanding around the border, you can play with those property. We just type the border here and we have all the options. Like we have the border, that is shorthand property. Border radius is used to add the rounded corner. Then we have border bottom, border color, border top, border width, border left, right, border style, and all the combination. Hope you are clear with the border, and now let's move to the next topic, and that is adding the height and width to our HTML element. When we talk about height and width properties, it is used to set the height and width of the HTML element. As I mentioned, when we are going with the HTML element, it will take only required size. If you go with the inline element, it will take the width of the content only. But if you go with the block element like a div or H1, it will take the 100% width of our screen. When we talk about the element, consider we have this HTML element. Here we have some border to it. Now, when we talk about the width, it is the width of the element, and when we talk about the height, it is the height of the element. We can set it as per our requirement. And to set the height, we have few options. We can go with the auto height, that is whatever the element is taking default height. Then we can go with the length. Either we can go with the pixel or centimeter. Those are the different units. We can go with the percentage, and it will take based on the width of our parent element or width of our screen. We can go with the value like initial. It will take the initial height, and we can inherit the height and width from elements parent. When we are going with the width, we have the same property, and we can set it something like this. For div element, we can set the height to anything, and width could be 400 pixel. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand that with the help of example. In VS Code, we will add the height on our description now. Description is a div element, and let me add some height and width to it. This is my div element. First, let me add the background color so you have some clear understanding around that. I'm adding the background color, and by default, it will take 100% width of the screen. Now, if you want to understand this different property, right? Understanding those are very simple. We just need to right click on our element and we can click on inspect. After that, we will see the dev tool is open here, and let me move this to the right side so that you will understand that in better way. If you click on any of the element, right? Let me click on the div element now, and if you come down, you will see the required CSS here. We have the description, and we are using background color as a aqua here. By default, this div element is a block element, and if I remove this background color, you will see the color is gone now, and that way you can modify CSS from here. I have added the background color, and I can add any property of my choice. Let me add the height here, right? When I type on height, we can set height to, let me go with the 300 pixel. As soon as I add a 300 pixel here, you will see height of our div element is updated. Now it is by default taking 100% width, right? And let me update width as well. When we are going with the width, I can set any property. Let me go with the 300 pixel as well. And now we will see our div is taking height as a 300 pixel and width as a 300 pixel. When we add the CSS here, it is just for the understanding purpose. But if you want to reflect that actually on the web page, we need to add the style in actual CSS. So let me add that style here. Let's save the changes, and now we will see our style is applied on the web page. And that is what height and width is. We can explicitly set the height and width of the element as per our requirement. When we are going with height and width, we have few more properties. We can set those properties to set the minimum and maximum height, or minimum or maximum width. And those properties are very important when we are going with different devices. If you understand those properties, I just added those properties here. We have a max height, and it is used to set the maximum height of the element. That means if you are going with the mobile device, right? We need to set the particular height so our element will not go beyond that height. And the same with the width as well as mean height and mean width. If you need more understanding around that, you can play with the different screens. Hope you are clear with how we can set the height and width to our element. And now let's move to the next topic, that is adding the padding on our elements. When we talk about the padding, it is used to add the space around an element's content. It will be inside your border. We know that when we are creating any of the HTML element, we are adding some content to it. And we also see how exactly we can add the border. And padding is used to add the space between your content and border. Suppose we have a content here, we have a border here, and whatever space we are seeing in between, right? In between our content and border, that is padding. We can set the padding by using the different properties. We can have simple padding left. We can set it in length or percentage. When we talk about the padding, we have four important properties. That is padding left, padding top, right, and the padding bottom. And here how we can set those properties. Suppose we have a div element and we can set the different values in pixel or percentage. When we are going with the padding, we also have the shorthand properties. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand them with the help of example. In Chrome, now we will add padding around our H1 element. Currently I'm using the rounded border here. Let me remove that border for our understanding, and we will see how exactly we can add the padding here now. If you look at here, there is no proper space between our content and the border, and with the help of padding we can do that. First, let's understand how exactly we can add padding to left, so that we have a space between this left border and our content. Let me add the padding, and the first property will be padding left here. If you go with the padding property, we will see the different options available, and the VS Code is suggesting all those options. Let me go with the left option first, and I will add padding in 30 pixel. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the space is added between your content and the left border. Same way we can set the padding to top as well. Padding top, and let me go with the 20 pixel. If you go to the browser, you will see the padding is added on top border and in your content. Let me add padding bottom as well, and I will go with any size. Let me go with the consistent value, that is 20 pixel. And now if you see, we have proper padding around your elements. We haven't set any property on the right hand side yet, because it's taking the 100% width and our content are in less size. Now if you want to understand this with the help of visualization, you can just click here, and when we click on our element, you will see the difference. I'm clicking on the H element, and you will see some green part, right? The green part is available here, and that is border. Some blue background around your content. If I go here, you will see the difference. And also if you come down, you will see all the CSS elements I applied here. We have the heading element, and all the available CSS rules are here. If I remove anything, you will see the updated changes on your web page. Now when we are adding the padding, we are adding different values here, right? For padding left, top and bottom, and we can go with the shorthand property, and it will be a padding property. When we are going with the padding property, and if you want to similar width around all the four sides, we can go with simple one value, that is 20 pixel. And what it will do, it will add the padding around all the four sides. Let's save the changes, and now if I go to the browser, you will see the 20 pixel padding is applied on all four sides. Also, if you need different width around all the four sides, we have shorthand padding option here, and the first property we will add for top. We have the top value here, then we have a right value here, then we have a bottom value, and then we have left value. Let me go to the new line and add that padding. For top, I can go with the 50 pixel. For right, I can go with the 20 pixel. For bottom, I can go with the 100 pixel. For your understanding, we don't need to add a semicolon here. We just give the space, and for left, I can go with the 200 pixel. Let's save the changes, and now if I go to the browser, you will see the different padding is applied from all the four sides. If I just inspect the element, and you will see the different padding added here. For top, we have 50 pixel. For right, we have 20 pixel. For bottom, we have 100 pixel, and for left, we have a 200 pixel. And if you look at our element, you will see the padding in green shade color, right? Border is completely green, then padding is with some green shade, and then we have the content width, and that is with pink color. Hope you clear with what is padding is. When we talk about the padding, and if you set some width to our element, width is only around the content. Just for understanding, let me add padding to our description as well. And if I go with the padding here, let me add padding as a 50 pixel here. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see padding is added to our element, and now width is changed. We have set the height and width as a 300 pixel to our element, but now it's added the padding 50 pixel on all these sides. So when we talk about the width, we have a 50 pixel padding here, then content width is 300 pixel and padding right is 50 pixel. So total width of our element is now 400 pixel. 300 is the actual width and 50 pixel and 50 pixel padding on both the side is 100. So total width of our element is 400 and the total height is also 400. So when we are adding the padding, we need to make sure like it will increase the width and height of our element. Hope you are clear with the padding. Padding is used to add the space between your content and your border. And if you want to understand that in detail, you can see those options here. You can play around these options and get more understanding around that. And now let's move to the next important property, and that is margin. When we talk about the margin, it is very similar as a padding. Padding is responsible for adding the space around our element inside the border, and the margin is responsible for adding the space outside our border. If you look at here, we have an element, then we have a border. The padding will add a space here and margin will add a space outside it. The margin is very useful when we have the multiple elements and we need to give the space between them. Same way as a padding, we have different properties for margin. We have margin left, top, bottom, and right. And we can also have the shorthand property, same as a padding here. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand them with the help of example. For understanding the margin, if you look at here, we have two different elements, right? One is H1 and then we have a div element. And we have some space in between. And that is a standard space given by the HTML. But if you want to give more space here, right? Then we can do that with the help of margin now. For that, let me add the border to my div element as well. Here I can give the border. Let me give 4 pixel and I will go with solid red here. And now I can set the margin between both of these. This is my heading and this is the description. And let me add the margin here. Margin 50 pixel. When I use the margin 50 pixel, you will see the difference. It is added the margin to our H1 element and that is outside of our border. Here we have the border and it is added the 50 pixel space around all the 4 sides of our web page. And that is what margin is. When we are going with the margin, we need to understand one important thing, and that is margin collapse. When we are adding the margin to multiple elements, right? Let me add margin to this paragraph as well, and then you will see the difference. Let me add margin 50 pixel here as well. Let's save the changes. And if you go to the browser, you will see the margin is added from all the side, right? But if you understand the space between these two, right? It is 50 pixel. We have added the margin 50 pixel to our H1 element and margin 50 pixel to our div element. When we are using margin to two different elements and those are appear one after another, they will basically collapse the margin and only keep the margin that is with the maximum value. Just for understanding, if I inspect here and hover on H1 element, you will see the yellow part outside our border is margin. And the same way, when I over the paragraph, you will see the similar space here. And this space is now common between both the margin. Hope you are clear with what a margin is. After margin, now let's move to the next important topic, and that is understanding the box model. When we are going with the box model, it is basically the combination of all 4 elements that we discussed. That is content, then padding, border, and margin. When you talk about the box model, it consists of elements content, padding, border, and margin. And it is the layout of HTML element. Consider we have some HTML element, we have some content. The content is taking the white space. Then after content, we have a padding, right? The blue color is the padding. Then outside of our padding, we have a border. Border is in orange color, and outside of border, we have margin here. So when we talk about the box model, it is a combination of your content, then its padding, then its border, and finally margin. If you go to the browser, understanding the box model is very simple. Let me just click on this H1 element, and if I go to bottom here, right, here we have all the CSS rule, and if I go to the bottom, you will see the box model. When I go to the innermost part, that is the content. If you look at the top, you will see the content highlighted. Then if I go to the padding, you will see now padding is highlighted. If you go to the border, now you will see the green color border on our H1 element. And finally, if I go to the margin, you will see margin is highlighted. And you will get all understanding here. If I talk about the content, the width of the content is 452 pixel and the height is 37 pixel. Then I have a padding. Padding is 50 pixel from top, 20 from right, 100 from bottom, and 200 from left side. Similarly, when I go with the border, border width is 4 pixel, and that is same around all the 4 sides. And then I have the margin. Margin will be 50 pixel from all the 4 sides. Hope you are clear with what box model is. It is the very important topic and asked in almost all the entry level front end interviews. The question could be like, what is box model? And then your answer should be, box model is the combination of your HTML elements, content, padding, border, and margin. And you can show them with the help of example. Hope you are clear with what is border, what is height and width of the element, what is padding, margin, and box model is. Try to implement different properties by your own and get more understanding around your CSS knowledge. After understanding the box model, now let's understand the different properties associated with the text element. For understanding the details, I just created a simple H1 element, and then we have a div element with some content. And now we will understand the different important properties associated with the text element. The first property is absolutely color, and we already know that, right? How exactly we can apply the color on our text element. Here we have a heading, and let me go to the CSS file, and in heading we are using margin and padding, and now I will add color as well. Let me go with the hex color system, and for that use some green color here, and now our text is in green color. Same way, add the color to our description. Let me go with the white color, and I will add background as well. Background color gray, so we have the gray background and we have the white color, and that are the two important properties. The first one is color, the second one is background color. Now let's understand the third property, and that is alignment of the text. When we go with the text align, we have 4 different values. The first value will be left, where the content will be aligned to left side of the entire width. Then we have the center value. When we go with the center value, the content will be aligned to the center of entire width. And then we have a value as a right. First, let's understand those 3 values, and then we will move to the 4th value. Here text align property, and I will go with left, and the default value is left for any of the content align. If you see here, content are on left side. Now let me change it to the center, and we will see the difference. Now content are aligned to the center of the entire width of our H1 tag. The entire width is 100%, and the content are aligned to the center now. Third option, we have a right. Let's save the changes, and now we will see content are aligned to right hand side. And now let's understand fourth option as well, and the option will be justify. When we go with the justify option, what it will do, it will basically align your content in a such way that it will keep the left hand side and right hand padding same, and all the content are aligned on that particular space. If you look at here, all the line is having exact same space and same at the right hand side, and in between it will adjust the space between the content. That is why text align justify is. Hope you are clear with the text align and the four different values: left, center, right, and justify. After that, we have a few important properties related to text transform, and which is used to transform our text to uppercase, lowercase, or capitalize. Just for understanding, we have the content where only first letter is in the capital after each statement. Here we have R in capital, and that's it, I think. And now we want to convert all this content to capital letters, and for that we have property text transform. When we go with the text transform property, here we have different values. The first, let me go with the uppercase. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, we will see all the letters are in uppercase now. The second option will be a lowercase. When we go with the lowercase, it will basically convert all your letter to lowercase. The third option will be capitalize. It will convert the first letter of each word to capital, and that is what text transform is. After text transform, we have some important properties related to spacing. The first one will be text intent, and let me use 50 pixel here. That means whenever our text start, it will take the 50% space on the left hand side of the first line. After that, we have letter spacing. When we go with the letter spacing, and if I keep the 10 pixel, it will add 10 pixel space between each letter. Then we have next option is word spacing. When we go with the word spacing, it will add that much space between each word. The one is for letter, one is for word. Now you see the 10 pixel is between each letter and 50 pixel is between each word. Hope you are able to understand what are the different spacing options we have. Now let's understand the next option, and that is related to line height. We want to increase the or decrease the line height, then we can go with the line height property. When we go with the line height property, if I go with the 1.5, it will add that much of space in your lines. We can go with the 2 as well, that will more space. And if I go with the less than 1 value, maybe 0.8, the space will be reduced. And this is what line height is. Finally, let me increase the line height, and we will understand one more property, and that is text shadow. The text shadow property is used to add the shadow to your text, and it will take two values. The first one is the shadow for horizontal, and the second one is shadow for vertical axis. If you save this, we will see we have some shadow to our letter. We have third option. If you use that option, it will basically blur our shadow. Let me go with third option as a 5 pixel. And if you save the changes, you will see the shadow is in blur now. And the fourth option is for color. Let me add that option as well. Let me add the red color here, save the changes. And if you go to the browser, you will see the shadow is in red color. Hope you are able to understand the text shadow property. The first two options are for vertical and horizontal shadow. Then third option is for the blur, and the fourth option is for color. Those are some important property we are using on text. It could be a color, it could be a background color. We have a text align, the different options for text decoration, spacing, transformation, and shadow. If you need more understanding, you can go to the W3 School website or the official MDN documentation and learn more about the different text properties. After understanding the text properties, now let's move to the next section. And in this section, we will discuss on different fonts available in CSS and why we need a font and what is the importance of it. When we talk about the fonts, fonts are used to control the appearance of the text on the web page. That means when we are using the font, we can set the font family, the weight of your text, whether it is the light, bold or semi-bold, and then we can set the size as well. When we are going with the font, we can set the font family, style, size, and weight. All those properties can be defined by using the CSS, and we can make the text the way you want to show it on the web page. It plays the very important role in terms of showing your website to end user. It will help us with the design and branding. It help us with the readability. If we are going with the good font family, good font size, the site is easy to read and the user can attract to your website. And it will also help with the consistency. If you go with the same font, same for family or font size on all the pages of website, your site is consistent across all the pages. When we are going with the fonts, it plays the very important role in the success of your website or web application. In CSS, understanding the font is very easy. We need to focus on few important properties, that is font family, then font weight and font size. Let's move to the VS Code and learn more about the fonts. In web development, we have multiple font families and each family is having the multiple fonts in it. Some of the font family are very safe, like it is used or supported by all the browser. But if you go with the latest font or the font from Google, they might not be supported by all the browser. In that case, we are using that font as a primary, and then we have also subsequent form to fall back to the safe form. Now let's go to the CSS and add font on our description. For that, let me go to the CSS file and here I will start adding the font family. When I click on the font family, VS Code giving us multiple options. And let me go with the Arial. Arial is the first font. Then we have the Helvetica and finally we have Sans Serif. And those are the specific priorities. Let's save the changes, and if I go to the browser, you will see the font is updated with the Arial font. For better understanding, let me remove the text shadow and also remove the font family for now. And if you look at, you will be having the default font initially, and if I use the new font family, you will see the font is updated to Arial now. Hope you are clear with font family. We have a number of font families. We can use the default font family option, or we can download the different online option as well. For now, we are going only with the basic font families, and now let me add the font weight as well. When we go with the font weight, again we have different options here, and here I can go with from 100 to 900. We have also option as a normal, lighter, bolder or bold. From 100 to 900, we have lighter to bold when we are going with the increased value. Let me add 900 for now. That means it is in bold format. My text is in complete bold now. If I go with the different values like 400, then you will see the text in lighter format. And now let's understand the third option as well. I think we are using this option already, and that is font size. When we are going with the font size, it helps us with the giving the size to our font. We can go with in the pixel or any other unit. And that is all about the font. If you need more understanding around the fonts, let me type CSS fonts here, and you can go on the any website. As I mentioned multiple times, the first option is the W3 School, and this is one of the most popular and famous website for learning the web development at initial phase. If you look at here, we have a different font families starting from serif, sans serif, then we have monospace, we have cursive and fantasy. You can learn more around that. Here we have different font families and example of the different fonts. Then we have option of website fonts as well, right? Some of the fonts are supported by all the browser, but some of the fonts are not. And here we have the list of main fonts, that is the web safe fonts. Then we can go with the fallback option as well. After that, we discuss what is the font size. Then we have font style, and we can use the font from Google as well. For Google fonts, let me search for Google fonts here. You can go to the first link, and on this official link we have multiple Google fonts available. You can select any of the choice you want. Let me go with this font for now. And what we need to do, we just need to click on get font. Either we can download it or we can have code here. Simply we can use the required code. Let me copy this code and add it in HTML file. Let's add it in head section, and then we need to copy the other code as well, right? We just need to use the font family here. Let me use that in CSS, and we will see the difference now. Let's save the changes. If you look at here, initially we are using the latest Google font, and as a fallback option we have sans serif, that is the safe web font. And now if I go to the browser, we will see my font is updated to the latest font I have downloaded from the Google. Hope you are clear with CSS fonts, what is the font family, font weight, and font size, and how we can use the different fonts from Google, as well as what is the save forms and how we can use the fallbacks. After our discussion on font, now let's move to the next section, and in this section we will understand a few important CSS properties. We will start our discussion with the display property, and this display property is used to specify how exactly element will be displayed on the web page. We have main two level of display elements, one is block and one is inline element. After that, we have a overflow property, and this property is required when we have a larger content on our web page and we want to show those content, and this property will specify how exactly we want to show those content. Either we want to show the scroll bar on the web page, or we want to hide the content which is going beyond our screen. Third property is float, and which is used to arrange the element on the web page. Like if you want to show some content on the left side, some content on the right side of your screen, then we can do that with the help of float. Float was used initially a lot, but now we have a better grid system, like we can go with the flexbox or we can go with the grid system. But for now, let's focus on the float at initial level, and then we will understand some background properties, especially related to images. Let's start our discussion with CSS display. When we talk about the CSS display property, it is used to define how elements are displayed in the document flow. And here we have multiple values. We can go with the block, we can go with the inline, we can have the inline block, and we can have the none. If you watched my HTML video, we know that we have two types of element, right? One is the block element, which will take the entire width of our screen, and the second one is inline element, which will take only the space up to its content. Some of the example of the block level elements are heading tags, then we can have the paragraph, we can have the div element, or some semantic elements like a header, footer. Some of the examples of the inline elements are like images, we have the anchor tag, or we can have the span element. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand display property in detail. To understand the display property, I created a very simple HTML structure here. At root level, we have the heading tag, and after that, we have some div elements, and below we have some span elements. Div elements are the block level element, and the span elements are inline element. Let me save the changes, and if you go to the browser, we will see our H1, and all four div elements are the block level elements, and they will take the entire space of our screen. If I over on any div element, you will see it is taking the entire width of our screen. Similarly, when I go with the span element, it is only take the required content width. And now we will understand how exactly we can override those properties, or we can add the extra display properties. Suppose now I want to show these 4 div element one after another. And for that, what I can do, instead of using the default display property, I will convert them into the inline elements. Things are simple. Let me go in the CSS file, and here I am using the div selector. I will just change the property to display and it will be inline. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see all the div element are now converted into inline elements. And now it will take the only space that is available for its content. When I'm going with the inline element, I am not able to set the height and width to my element. If you want to set the height and width, then we need to go with one more option, and that is inline block. When I will go with inline block, initially everything will be same as the inline element, but I can set the height and width. Let me add height as a 100 pixel, and let me add width also 100 pixel. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, now we will see these 4 elements taking the required height and width. Let me also add the background so we'll understand them in detail. Let me add some black background. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see all the 4 elements are in the black background. Let me change the color to white so it will be displayed properly. And now we will see those items are arranged in the one after another. When we are going with the block element, it will take the 100% width of our web page. When we are going with the inline element, it will take the only required space as of the content, but we are not able to add the height and width to it. And when we are going with the inline block, it is same as the inline, but we can set the height and width to it. Now let's display these items in better way. For that, let me change the color to little bit gray, and I will add some padding to my content. Padding 20 pixel, and let me go with the text align as a center here. Save the changes, and if you go to the browser, now you will see the content are arranged one after another as expected. Instead of going the fixed width, that is 100 pixel, let me go with the width in the percentage. I can set the 20%, and now we will see all the items are arranged one after another. Here we have given some padding. That's why we are not able to set all the 4 items on the single line. But if I reduce the padding, now you will see all the items are arranged properly. Similarly, now we have 3 span elements, right? Those elements are the inline, and if you want to convert those elements to the block, we can use the display property, and we can set the property to block, and those then will be converted into the block element and will take the 100% width. Apart from these 3 values, we have few other values as well, like we have display none. In that case, the element is not visible. We will understand that later. And we also have the display as a table. Then we have display as a grid or flex. Those are the latest way, and we will understand flex and the grid in the upcoming videos. And now let's understand the 4th property, and that is display none. When we are going with the display none, let me show that only one single element, and for that let me add the class here, and the class name I will give as a div1 here. Let's save the changes and add some CSS on it. To add the CSS on div1, I will add display none here. As soon as I add the property display none and go to the browser, you will see that item is not available. Let me update the content so you will understand them better. This is 1, this is 2, this is item 3, and this is item 4. Let's save the changes. If I go to the browser, you will see item 2 is not visible. When we go with the display none, it will remove the element completely from the layout, and it will adjust the rest of the element. As we are discussing display none property, let's understand one more property, and that is visibility. When we go with the visibility property, it's having two main values. Let me add that here. It is the visibility, and we have two important values. The first one is visible, and the second one we have visibility hidden. Visibility property is basically used to show or hide the element from the web page, but it will not impact the other elements. It is same as a display none, but in display none, the element is not visible on the UI, and whatever space is taken by that element, that is also removed, and it will impact other elements layout as well. But when we are going with visibility hidden property, it will hide the element from the DOM, but it will keep the space as it is. Just to understand, let me remove this, and for the div 1, instead of display none, now let's add the visibility hidden. Let me go with the hidden, and if I save the changes and go to the browser, you will see element item 2 is not available on the DOM now, but whatever area occupied by that element, it's kept as it is, and it will not impact rest of the element. The position of the item 1, 3 and 4, that is present on the same place where it is present before. Hope you clear with what is visibility is. And when we talk about the visibility hidden and the display none, it is one of the most important and asked interview question. Visibility hidden is basically just hide the element on the DOM. It will keep that element space as it is, and it will not impact other element on the web page. But when we are going with the display none, it will hide the element on the web page, and it will also remove the space for it, and that's why it will impact the alignment of other elements as well. Hope you are clear with what is different display property, what is visibility, and what is difference between display none and visibility hidden. After this discussion, now let's move to the next topic, and we will understand the property overflow. When we talk about overflow property, it is basically used to control the content which is going beyond the limit. That means if we have the element with large content and we are setting some height and width to it, then that content may go beyond your height, right? And in that case, we will require the overflow property to adjust our content. If you understand the definition, the overflow property in CSS control what's happened to the content that exceeds the bounds of the container. That means the height of the content is more than height of your container. And it is especially useful when you are dealing with the fixed height or fixed width content. When we talk about the overflow, we have four different values. The first one is visible, the second one is hidden, the third one is scroll, and the fourth one is auto. And depending on size of our content and value, we want to specify whether the content of that element is managed by using scroll or not. Now let's move to the VS Code and understand overflow properties in detail with all these four options. To understand the overflow property, I have created a little bit content here. Initially, we have H1 heading, and then I have some large content. Not very large, but we will understand the overflow property by adding the height and width to our element. Initially, I am going with height as a 200 pixel and width as a 200 pixel. If my content are in that limit, I will see the content on the screen. But if my contents are going beyond that limit, we will see the content outside our element. To understand the detail, let me add the background color, and for background color, let me go with the aquamarine for now. Let's save the changes, and by default, if you go to the browser, you will see content are going beyond our element. If you go with the overflow property, and if you add the option as a visible here, then we are going with the default option. That means we have the large content, and all the content that fit in the screen are visible, along with the we have extra content below that. Now let's go with the second option, and that is overflow hidden. When we go with overflow hidden, it will only show the content in our element height or width. If the content goes beyond that, those contents are not visible. And here I don't have any option to see those content. And that is not a good option, right? When we have the large content, those content should be visible. And in this case, we can go with the third option, and that option is scroll. When we go with the scroll option, and if my contents are going beyond the screen, you will see the scroll is available here to see that content. But when I go with the scroll option, and if my content are adjusted in screen itself, or that element height or width itself, then also I will see the scroll here. Just for understanding, let me increase the height to 300 pixel. Let's save the changes. You will see the contents are adjusted in the height and width, but you will see the scroll on y-axis as well as scroll on x-axis. And that is what option of scroll is. When we go with the scroll, whether we have the content in adjusted window or the content are going outside, in both the cases, scroll is visible. And to avoid that, we have next option, and that is auto. When we use the auto option, we will see when the contents are fitting inside the area, the scroll is not available here. But when my content grows, or when I update the height or reduce the height, we will see the scroll is available here. And that is what auto option is. If the contents are fit in the screen, the scroll will be not visible. If the content are going beyond the screen, the scroll is visible. And we can adjust the scroll as per our requirement. If you want to scroll for only one axis, then we have the option of overflow X and overflow Y property. Hope you are clear with what is overflow, then what are the different properties for it, and how to use them. After understanding the overflow property, now let's move to the next property, and that is float. Basically, the float property in CSS is used to position the elements to the left or right of their container. Float was used initially when we don't have the column system like flexbox or a grid. At that time, we are able to use the float to adjust the content to the left side or right side. But nowadays, we are using the column system like flex or grid. To use the float, we have a two value, that is left and right, and we can adjust those on our web page. If you see float property anywhere, it is used to basically float the element to left or right. We will not go into its implementation. And after float, now we will discuss background property. When we talk about the background properties, we already discussed what a background color is, right? With the help of a background color, we are able to set the background color to our element. After that, we can set the background image. When we go with the background image property, it is specify the image to use at the background of the element. We are using the color. Instead of color, we can use the image at the background. Then we have a property related to image, and that is image repeat. When we go with the background image, by default, if the image is small in size, the image is shown in the repeated manner. And with the help of image repeat property, we will adjust or specify whether we want to repeat that image or not. And last option, we have background position. When we want to show only some part of the image or adjust the image position, then we can go with the background position property. So let's move to the VS Code and understand the background properties, especially related to image with the help of example. To understand the background properties, I just created the initial HTML code. Here we have a h1 element which having the heading, and we have a div element which just have some description. And we will see how exactly we will add the background image on our body and how exactly it will look like. I already created the image folder here, and I have one dummy background image, and now I will add that background image in my CSS. For that, let me use the body element here. When we add the CSS on body, it will be applicable to all the HTML pages. First property is the background image, and here we need to use the URL. In URL, we need to provide the image path, and that is in the images folder, and we need to use the DG image here. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the background image is applied to our body. By default, when we are using the background image, it will repeated on X and Y axis based on its size. Our image is with less size, so it is repeated multiple times on our X axis and same on Y axis. And if you want to avoid image background repeat, then we can go with one more property, and that is background repeat. When we go with the background repeat, we have multiple options. Either we can repeat only on x-axis, we can repeat on y-axis. We have the option of repeat, that is the default option, and we can also go with no repeat. When we go with the no repeat, and it will take only its height and width. Suppose we want to show this image on entire width of your screen, right? And in this case, we need to go with one more property, and that is background size. When we go with the background size, we have multiple options here, and we need to use the contain or cover option. The first one is cover. Let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see the image is covered by the entire screen. And the second option we have is contain. When we go with the background as a content, it will stretch our images and fit into the screen. Let me use cover here for now, and then I will add one more property, and that is background position. When we go with the background position, by default your image is starting from top 0 and left 0, but we can adjust those positions. Let me use 150 pixel here. Our image is starting by giving the 100 pixel space from the left side and 50 pixel space from the top side. And that is what background position is. When we talk about the background position properties, we have one important concept, and that is image sprite. Consider we want to use multiple small images on our web page. Like we have 50 images on our web page, and including 50 images separately, it is not a good option. It will basically make those extra requests on our web page. And to avoid that, what we can do, instead of using those 50 images separately, we can consolidate all those images into the single image. And then we can use the background position property. To understand, I already have some HTML. Here I have created the 6 different div elements. We are going with the same initial class, and we have separate class as well. And now we will see how exactly we will use the background image and the image sprite here. For that, first let me use this icon class, and I will use my background image here. This is my icon class, and then I can use the background image. Let me use the URL here, and the image path will be images/social. Once it is done, let me also give some height and width. Height could be anything. Let me go with the 200 pixel for now, and the width, let me go with the 200 pixel. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the images is repeated multiple times. We only have this single image, but it is shown multiple times now. Instead of giving the height and width as a 200, let me go with only 40 pixel height here. Let's save the changes, and now we will see we have 6 images here. We have 6 different div element, and now it is taking the 6 different images. Instead of using the div as a block element, let me use the display property and we will convert it to the inline block. Once I use the inline block, you will see all those images are displayed on the same line. Also, let me remove the background position for last image which is present on the body, so we have clear understanding. If you look at here, we have single image, but now that is present on the 6 different divs. And what we will do, we will just adjust their position now. That means we have a single image, but we just need to adjust their position, and we will show the different social media icon here. Let me go with the icon 1. That is my first icon, and here I need to use the background position property. By default it is 0 0. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see the Facebook icon, but we have some left and top face here, and if you want to remove that, let me use -2 pixel for left and -2 or 3 pixel for your top. You need to adjust that based on your image. And now if you look at here, our Facebook image looking at center, and same way we can do for next images. Let me just add the icon classes first. It is the icon 2, it is the icon 2, then we have icon 3, 4 and so on, right? First let me add those icons so you will understand the background position easily. This is icon 3, then we have icon 4, it is my class, so we need to use the dot here. Then we have icon 5, and finally we have icon 6 dot, and we have icon 6 here. Here we need to use the background position property. Let me use the background position, and initially let me go with 0 0. Let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see the second image is showing as a Facebook, but now we will do the inspect element and adjust our background position. So if you look at here, we have a background position. We already know, right? We use -3 pixel for our top, so that our images is looking in the center. Here it is looking in the center, right? But instead of Facebook, we need to use the different image, and for that I will update my left now. Instead of 0, let me go with the plus or minus position. When I am changing its size, you will see image is changing here. Let me go with the updated values now. When I am changing the value here, you will see the images is updated on the top. And now we will use the Twitter image here. For that we need to go with -40 pixel. Now I will go for the third image, and we know that, right, our images are on the single line. For that, top values as it is, but we just now to change our left value now. For left, initially I was going with -2, and now I'm going with the -40. So difference is around 40 here, right? So let me go with -80 pixel here, and we can keep -3 pixel. Let's save the changes, and now we will see the third icon here, that is TikTok. Let me copy this, and things are simple now, right? Instead of 80, let's go with the 120. All the images in my sprite are basically almost 40 by 40 pixel, but if you have the large images, their size could be a different, height could be a different, and based on that we need to adjust your background position here, and also your height and width at root level. I have used 120 here, then I will use 160 for next image, and for final image I will go with almost -200. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, now you will see all the images shown as expected. Hope you are clear with image sprite. Finally, when we're talking about the image background properties, it is good practice to use the background color. Suppose we have a background image on our body. Due to some mistake, if image is not loaded, maybe some network issue, or if we misspell the image or image is not available, right? Then you are not seeing anything on the background. And in that case, we can go with fallback as a background color. let me go with some yellow color here so that we have at least some fallback. If you look at here, we have some background, and if we have proper image, we will see image in the background. For now, we have used the cover here, and it is taking the height based on our width. And if I close my dev tool, it will take the 100% height and width. Hope you are clear with different background properties, starting from background color, background image, background size, background position, background repeat, and image sprite. After background properties, now let's understand how exactly we can add the CSS on anchor element. Here I have created a simple HTML, and I am going with 4 different anchor tags. I have added classes to them, and I just have some content. When I save the changes and go to the browser, you will see the link 1, link 2, 3 and 4 are available here. The anchor tag is an inline element, so that we will see all are on single line. And now let me add or show you how we can add the different styling to it. Let me give them display as an inline block and give some width so that we will understand them in better way. I just add the common CSS directly on anchor element, and here I will use display as a inline block. And let me give some width here. Width could be 200 pixel. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, now you will see having proper distance. Let me also use text align as a center so that the text will be centered from both the sides. Now you are seeing text on the center. Let me change this width to 100 only. Yeah, now you are seeing link in proper way. We can use those link for top navigation. Now we will keep first link as it is, but in the second link we might need to remove the underline, right? Or we also might need to change the color. We will take the class of link 2 here. I will add that class in CSS, and then I will use color property here. Color could be green. And if you want to remove the underline on my anchor tag, then we need to use the text decoration property. Text decoration is having the multiple options, like we can have the dash, dotted, double, and those are used for line. We also have the line color option, and here we can go with none. When we use the none value, that means it will remove the underline for our link tag. Now let's understand the third option. In third option, we might need to show our anchor link as a button, right? And here what we can do, we just need to use the third anchor link here, and I can give border. Border could be 1 pixel, and we'll go with solid. Let me go with some gray color. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see border is added to our link, and it is looking like button now. Just for making it more beautiful, let's add padding, and padding could be 5 pixel. Also, let me give the color as a green and remove the underline from my anchor tag. And now you will see it is looking like a button. And if you go anywhere, right, if you go to the corner of this button, or if you go anywhere, you are able to click on that link. And this is how we can convert our link into the button. Now let's understand the fourth option as well. For that, I just need to copy paste all these things. And now what I will do, I will convert this button and give some background color to it. It could be a background color, and in background color I can go with, let me go with some dark orange color. Let's save the changes, and now if you go to the browser, you will see our button is in the orange color. Let me change the color from green to white so that our button will look good. Our button is looking good, and we can also change its font weight, right? If I use the font weight as a 700 or 8 or 900, then it is in the dark. Yeah, hope you are clear with how exactly we can style our link elements. We can go with the simple link. We can change the color or remove the underline. Then we can give the border, or we can add the background color. When we are going with the link, we have some more important selectors, and we called it as a pseudo classes. We will understand the pseudo classes later, but just for understanding, let me add one class here. Here I'm doing that changes on my button 4, and we need to use the h over as a pseudo class here. When I'm using this class, that means when I mouse over on this button, we can change its styling. And for that, let me use the background color. Instead of orange, let me go with the chocolate color just for your understanding. And now if you look at here, currently I have the orange color, but as soon as I hover on this element, you will see the color is changing. And that way we can implement the anchor tag or different buttons. Hope you are clear with how can we add styling to your anchor tag or link element. We will understand the different pseudo classes or pseudo elements later, but now let's move to the next topic, and where we will understand how exactly we can style our HTML tables. For adding the styling on our table, here I have created the very simple table, and we have one table heading and a couple of table data rows. If I go to the browser, you will see we have a table with heading and we have 2 rows here. Just for adding the styling, let me go to the CSS, and first we will remove this unnecessary border. And for that, we will add that styling directly on the table element, and we have property called border collapse. When we use the border collapse property, we have option of collapse here. When we save the changes, we will see the extra border is removed now. And after that, we will increase the width of our table. And for width, we can go with 20 so that it will look good. Next thing, we will add padding on our TD element. And things are simple. We can use the table here. If we use the TD, and then we can give the padding. Let me go with 10 pixel for now. And in this case, it will add the padding 10 pixel from all the 4 sides. Let me do same for our table header. It is th. Let's save the changes, and now we will see the padding is applied for our table header as well as table data. And after that, we will try to give some background color to it. If I go with the table header, let me go with coral color. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see table header is in background color. And the same thing I can do for rest of my data element as well. Let me add it here, and I can directly add a style on my tr element as well, so that it is applicable for t header as well as table data. And here I can use the background color, and I can go with some light color now. Let me go with little bit gray color. If you look at here, my background color is changed now. And here we can also use the our property. I can use the table row, and we can use the h hour property here. And in this case, let me go with some lighter color. I can go with a DDD. And now when I hover on this element, you will see the text is changing. That way we can add the different styling on your table. We can have the different styling for header. We can have the different styling for your data elements, and we can add the styling considering your even and odd rows. For that, we need to use the different pseudo elements or pseudo classes, and we will understand them later. Hope you are clear with how exactly we can add the basic styling on your table. And after table, now let's move to the next section where we will add styling on our form. We will go with very basic form, just adding the username and password, and we will add the basic styling around it. To add styling on form, I have created very basic structure here. At a root level, we have one div element, then we have a form heading, and inside that we have a form element. And here I'm going with a 2 label, that is username and password, and we have 2 input element for it. Just for adding the line, currently I'm going with the br tag, and finally we have submit and reset button. And if you go to the browser, you will see our form is looking something like this. And now we will add styling on our form. First, let me move this form to the center. And for that, we need to add some styling on our container element. So let's start adding the styling on our container element. I'm just adding the styling directly on element here. but when we are working on actual project, we can go with proper classes and IDs so that it will avoid the overlapping or overriding of your style. Let me give some width here. In the width, I'm going with 25% for now, and let me add some background color. Background color could be little bit gray here. Let's save the changes. Now you have some background color, and let me give some padding as well as margin to it. Padding will be 15 pixel, and margin plays very important role. When we want to make it to the center, we can go with margin as a arrow here. With auto margin, it will basically keep the same space from both the side. Let me add some margin from top as well, and for that let me go with the 20 pixel. Let's save the changes. Now we will see our form is in the center. First, let me add some styling to my heading, that is H1, and I will give color as a green here. And if you look at here, we have more space on top of our H1 element, right? And to reduce that space, let me go with negative margin. Just add the margin top and go with -5 pixel. And now our heading showing the proper space. And after that, let's start adding the CSS on our form elements. First, let me add the styling on a label. And for that, I will go with the font size as a 18 pixel. It's label. And now we will see we have some better font. After that, let's give width to it so that we have two text element on the same line. For that, I will use width as a 100 pixel here. And we just need to add the display property as well. Currently, it is the display inline, and we need to use the inline block to make our width working. Yeah, it is working fine. Let's add padding as well, and I will just add a padding bottom here. Padding bottom will be 10 pixel, and we will see the padding is also added here. And now let me work on this input element. When we want to add the styling on input element, we can directly use the input as an element here. But in this case, the same styling will be applied to the submit and reset button. And here we have other option as well. We can add the class here, or we can go with the IDs. For both the input, we need to add the same styling. And for that, let me go with the class here. Class could be text, and same class I will add here. Class equal to text. The changes here, we are using the input element, and on input element we have text as a class, so we will use the input element here dot, and then we have a text. And let's add first property width here. Let me go with the width as a 60%, and we will see width is increased. Let me go with the 65% so that we have proper space between both the sides. Yeah, we will see we have proper width here. Let me add some height as well, and for height let me go with the 20 pixel initially. Yes, we will see height is also applied properly. We can use the placeholder text, or we can also, I think, use the background color as well. Let me try with the background color as well, and we will see if the background color is applied or not. Let me go with the very light color, and now we will see we have some background color on our text elements. Finally, let's add some styling to our button as well, and for that let's use the different color. First, let's add a styling to submit button, and for submit we can go with the attribute. Now it will be input element, then we have attribute as a type here, and the type will be submit. Now let me add first background color, and the background color could be green here. Save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see green color here. But we have some black border as well, right? So we can keep border to any other color, or we can remove border to none as well. That means we don't require any border. You will see we don't have any border here now. Let's add some padding. Padding will be a 10 pixel, and then we can use text color as a white here. Let's save the changes, and now we will see our button as expected. It is taking more height, so let me use both side padding little bit more, but top and bottom padding to 5 pixel only. It is 5 pixel and 10 pixel from both the sides. Now your button is looking good. After that, we have a reset button, right? And I can go with similar styling for my reset button as well. So instead of submit button, we have a reset button here, and then I can use background color as a little bit gray here. Let me go with the gray color. Then we have border none, padding will be same, and the color as a white. And you will see the reset button is also working fine. After that, we can move this button to right side as well, right? And for that, we have different options. We can directly use the margin padding, or we can use the float option. Or when we are going with the grid system, managing that will be easy. You can try those options. The simplest option, like wrap this both the button into the container, and we can use some padding and margin to it. And the second option, again, we can wrap these two into the container, and we can use the float right here. Hope you are clear with how exactly we can add the styling on form. We can have the different options, like we can have the text area, we can have the drop down, we can have the radio button, check boxes, and you can try to implement styling around those by your own. As a last topic of this section, let's understand how exactly we can add CSS on our HTML list. For that, I have created a very simple HTML structure. We have a heading on top, and below that we have some unordered list element. When we talk about the HTML list, we know that we have three different types. The first one is unordered list, to show the list in bullet point. Then we have ordered list, to show the list in number format, and then we have a definition list, where we can show the term and definition format content. Now we will start applying few different properties on our HTML list. For that, let me use the UL element here, and I will directly use the styling. When we type the list here, we will see the different list styling property. And first, let me go with the list style type. We have a different option here. List style type means how exactly we want to show our bullet point. That is in the bullet format. We can have the decimal, we can have the lower Roman, or any options available here. We can go with square as well. Let me select the square, and if you go to the browser, we will see the list style in square now. Apart from that, we can try the different option, and we can use different images as well. For that, let me use the list style image, and we can add the image with specific height and width. For that, we need to go with very little size image, and let me use the URL here, and I will use the image path. We have the images in the image folder, and let me go with image as a check.png. And if you go here, we have checked images here instead of bullet point. And that is what use of list style images. Let me give some padding here. Padding could be a 5 pixel, so that we have a space between them. Now we have used little bit padding, but if you look at here, our content are going on the left side, and for that we have one more option, and that is list style position. When we go with the list style position, generally we have two major options. The first one is outside, where the contents are going on the outside of our screen, and the second option we can go with the inside. When we go with the inside option, we will see our content little bit shifted to right hand side of our main container. And those are few important properties around the list. We can also go with the shorthand property, that is list style, and here we have different option. First, we need to use the type. We can go with the square here. Then we have a position, whether we want to go inside or outside. And third option, we have image URL. Let me go with the URL, and I can use the URL as a images, and then we have check image here. Let me remove the first three properties, and if you save the changes and go to the browser, you will have similar result. Hope you are clear with list style properties. Finally, as a part of this video, we have covered our CSS starting from very basic, like we understand the local setup. We've seen how exactly we can add the CSS by using different way. We look into the different selectors. We have seen all the important CSS properties. After that, we have covered some major concept like what is opacity, then what is the cascading, specificity, different colors, comments, different background properties, box model with content, padding, border, and margin, and how exactly we can form the box model. Then we have seen different overflow properties, how exactly we can use the different fonts, and we implemented different CSS properties on your link element, your forms, HTML table, and list. This video is getting longer. We will stop here. In this video, we have covered all the basic and in-depth CSS that is required to start your CSS web development. Try to implement the different CSS properties by your own and get more understanding around the CSS. We need to cover few advanced concepts as well, and those are CSS positions, CSS animation, transformation, and transition. We will look into those concepts in upcoming videos. And after that, we will discuss the CSS grid, CSS flexbox, and responsive web design. Hope you are clear with all the basic CSS. Try to implement those things by your own and get more understanding around your CSS knowledge. Finally, if you are enjoying my content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share beautiful content with your friend so that it will reach to more people. I really appreciate your time and attention here. Thank you for watching, and see you in next one. Till now, thank you. Bye.